So unless you've been living under a rock like Patrick Star, a game is currently in its second or maybe third playtest. I mean, that's a good start, isn't it? If I don't even know which playtest it's on, why am I even making a video on it? The game is currently in its second playtest called Warborne Above Ashes, and a lot of people, especially in my Twitch chat, if you didn't know, we stream practically every day that I'm not lazy over at twitch.tv/YouTube tbanj. I'll leave the link in the description for you, or I might even pin it to the top of the comments section so you guys can hop in there and give me some company because I get lonely and sad. A constant ongoing debate is whether or not Warborne is going to be the Albion killer. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. You guys have been loving these commentaries that I've been doing, just randomly hopping onto Albion and playing the game and just chatting about what's on my mind, what people have been talking about, just keeping up with the community, keeping up with mainly like the Albion community. And my simple answer to if Warborne is going to be the Albion Online killer is no. Now, something that people need to understand who have been saying this is that Albion is not a PvP game. Now, that might annoy you if I say that, but in actual fact, Albion is not a PvP game, whereas Warborne is predominantly based, actually entirely based around PvP currently. Now, a big thing to remember, like I say, is that Albion Online is a gathering, crafting, and economy game mainly. It's more based around like the story of your character. With it being a sandbox, you know, you can build up your own island. You start the game, you gather, that's the first thing they make you do. You craft gear, you go out, you do PvP. If you're into full loot PvP, you get other people's gear, you lose your gear, you go back to the market, you buy that gear back, or you go ahead and craft it yourself, you sell the gear that you got. But Albion Online is not a PvP game. You guys that watch this video, more than likely are watching this video because you enjoy and you consume PvP content within Albion. It's the most common content that you can see. If you watch like any other creator, most people, or 99% of other creators, are uploading PvP content because that's the most interesting content to watch. But a big thing that people are forgetting is that only, say, 7 to 10% of Albion's player base actually participates in PvP, more specifically full loot PvP. So where Albion's daily player base amasses to around about 100 to 150,000 players, only say 10,000 of those players actually go out looking for PvP in red zones and black zones. That's because the game, as well as EVE Online, is niche in that sense where if you die, you lose everything. So it's quite different for a lot of people who've been playing MMOs their entire life, or maybe if you just enjoy the MMO genre in general, it's quite different of a game to be getting into because a lot of people don't want to lose their gear. A lot of people feel like in MMOs you build everything up and you just don't want to take that risk, and that's why the numbers are so low. With that being said, Warborne's total daily player base for, you know, the second playtest is currently around about 10k players, so it's basically similar numbers for people who actually just want PvP. Now, in my opinion, Warborne is basically, I mean, if you enjoy PvP, Warborne's the way better game. You're basically playing with more incentives to do PvP. What am I doing? Like, what the f is going on today? Oh, what am I doing? What the hell? I've been playing way too much Warborne. That's a problem. So I'm basically just going to talk about like the similarities, which in actual fact, there aren't many. They're two completely different games. Like I say, if you want PvP, you should be playing Warborne. If you want to do the more generic MMO playstyle, you want Albion. The only real similarities that the games share is the fact that they both have like a version of Corrupted and Hellgates. Now, the reason I say that you should be playing Warborne if you enjoy the PvP aspect, more specifically the full loot PvP aspect, or even if you're a yellow zone player or soon to be orange zone player potentially, and you enjoy that side of the game, Warborne is a way better option. I'll tell you why. When you do PvP in Warborne, it is still technically full loot. You do lose items and you do take items from other players, but it works in the sense of if I kill a player or I die, I only lose 1 or 2 items that I'm actually wearing right now, and I only lose 50% of my inventory. And that's everywhere on the map. There isn't a version of blue zone, there isn't a version of yellow zone. Every single area on the map, besides, you know, in your base or in your guild's base, has full loot PvP. Even in the starter zones, you can get killed. Now, Warborne's more specifically based towards, like I say, the PvP, and the main incentive is to build up your character, their weapons, their gear, their spec, their XP, like all that type of stuff, purely to do PvP. There's no real economy in the game. Basically, if you die, you buy something off the trading merchant, who it's basically prices set by an NPC depending on how many people are buying the item that you buy. So if more people are buying that item, say like it's currently meta, the price is going to go up. And if less people are buying that item, then the NPC or the game decides, you know, the price should go down. Now, a big debate we were having in my stream yesterday is that in Albion, the only real incentive in doing PvP is for loot or silver, whether that be, you know, solo, small scale, ZVZ. The only real thing you get out of PvP is improve your PvP ranking on the leaderboards. You get silver from loot, and it's more based towards reputation of, you know, your guild or yourself as a player. But in Warborne, the PvP works in a very specific way. So you choose your drifter, which is basically your character. I think there's a choice of anywhere between like 15 to 20 characters in the game that all have their own unique passives and abilities. You also have a shit ton of weapons, which all have their own unique passives and abilities. And then you can take that and you can go either farm chests in the open world, you can even go do corrupted dungeons, like I say. So you choose your character, you choose your armor, you choose your weapon, and now you go out and you can either do chests, you can do corrupted dungeons, or like type of corrupted dungeons. Hellgate, small scale ZVZ, you fight for cores, you fight for open world chests, you fight over gathering spots, you fight over something called hubs, which are basically like terries. But the reason you do all of this is to gain medals. Now, there's certain types of medals. You've got faction medals, PvP medals, warband medals, which warband is basically, if I say warband, it's basically just guild. And you can then take those medals and you can go spend them in the stores around the map or in your guild hideout, generally just to improve your equipment or, you know, XP or unlock more gear. So everything always relates back to the PvP. And something I was debating yesterday is that in Albion, when you get a kill, you basically get loot, and that loot can basically just be used to either buy tomes, cosmetics, or your gear back. To give you an example, I would never in Albion engage in ZVZ. There's absolutely 0 point for players to be engaging in ZVZ in reality, unless you care about reputation or you're trying to increase the enchantment rate. Is it, what are we doing here? Ooh, hello. Ow. Now you're on your knees. Shall we do this 5.2 together? Oh my god, it just disenchanted. That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant, isn't it? That's just what you want to see. Whereas in Warborne, like I say, I actively engage in ZVZ because the rewards of me engaging in ZVZ and fighting over a zone are way more than me just being able to gather higher enchanted resources in my area. In Warborne, you're fighting for the zones that have the highest tier predominantly because you want the best chests and you want something called exergy. Exergy is kind of just like a resource that's used all around the game. And you want the higher tier zones and you want your guild to control the higher tier zones so that you can mine higher tier exergy. And in turn, that helps you as a solo player. One big reason why, you know, I do actually enjoy Warborne so much is because it's still a playtest. And the amount of features that it already has is so creative. Now, it's not quite 5.2, but it'll do the job. So right now, the focus on Warborne is purely PvP, and there's no other real aspects of the game. So that's why I don't try and compare it too much, because, you know, Albion's been out for, say, like 10 years at this point. We're on the second playtest right now, which I think we're probably only like 2 months into Warborne being released. But the thing is, I'm not personally trying to compare the games. In my opinion, the games are too far apart. I just want to sort of get involved in this debate of whether Warborne is the Albion killer. But as I say again, the games are far apart. The only real middle ground that they have is the PvP. And honestly, I really would consider switching to Warborne entirely, purely for the PvP, because me as a player, that's what I enjoy doing. Even though I'm gathering right now, I really just enjoy PvP. What is this? I do not want that. But going back to what I said, in Albion, there's no real reason to PvP besides reputation or, you know, building up your economy. And now in Albion, that economy can be used for anything for sure, in buying, you know, pieces for your island to improve your island, or, you know, there are some good benefits of just that silver in general. But in terms of PvP, a lot of us have made the transition now, because when you do PvP in Warborne, you actually feel like you're getting rewarded for it. And it's a grindy game too. You have to grind purely to be able to PvP. That's one thing where I will say they are so far apart, is that at the moment, at least in Warborne, people with higher IP will win every fight. If you have a day or two on somebody else, which I'll explain in a moment, you will win the fight. In Albion, as you guys see me do many times, I can wear 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, and I can take out 5-3, 6-3, 7-3 players, purely based around skill. But in Warborne, because of how item power scales, it's practically impossible to do that. The game needs you and wants you to put hours of work in, and that's the one drawback I have, because the game in itself is new player friendly for PvP, where, you know, if I die, I don't lose much. But also at the same time, if you're late to the game, you just get violated so hard, because something which is like, you know, let's put it in a way that Albion players can understand. If I'm 4.3 fighting against someone who's 6'3, in Warborne, if I'm 4.3 and that person's in 6'3, it feels like they're in 10'3, like items that you can't even comprehend yet. Now, it might be because the game's in its second playtest and I never got to play the first one, so my knowledge of the game isn't huge, but I see a lot of people complaining about the same thing, in that, you know, sometimes it's just impossible to see these underdog fights ever win. Especially if you're like, I would say if you're a solo player, possibly even duo player, stick to Albion, at least for now. But if you're somebody that, you know, enjoys small scale, or you enjoy the tough fights, or even you enjoy ZVZ and you want an incentive to do PvP, not just get loot, then Warborne is just by far the best option. Now, going back to it, will Warborne kill Albion Online? Definitely not. But I will say that Albion has taken steps and will take steps to try and prevent losing their player base to Warborne. Now, again, remember something that I said earlier? I don't know if I went fully into detail about it. That only, I would say, around 10 to 15,000 players participate in full loot PvP in Albion. And other forms of PvP, there's no real reason to get involved in them. Whereas Warborne has kind of closed that stepping stone for people who are too nervous to get into PvP, and it basically just says, like, look, try it out and you don't lose much if it goes wrong. But again, a big thing to keep in mind is that 90% of Albion is mainly just gatherers and crafters. So even people like Yellow Zone players who want to participate in PvP but not fully full loot PvP might be inclined to make the switch, because the risk versus reward is like actually beneficial. The way I could describe it is, imagine doing faction warfare in Red Zone, but on top of getting faction points and loot, you also get PvP medals, which can be used towards, you know, improving your character, or, you know, just building up new gear, and also guild medals, which can be used for the same thing. I'm excited to see where Warborne goes though. Like, obviously with it still being in a playtest, I do think the amount of features it already has is insane. Obviously, there's a lot of tweaks to be made in general, but for a game that's only, you know, 2-3 months old, I think like how uniquely good it is in what it does, it's crazy. But again, the game isn't going to be for everyone, you know. A lot of people nowadays are very specific about the art style or like, I mean, the play style. If you like a game, you like a game. If you dislike a game, you dislike a game. There's no saying what's right or wrong. So to summarize it, Albion is mainly an economy game. Warborne is more of a PvP game. Now, you can prefer the PvP in Albion, or you can prefer the PvP in Warborne. And I will say, off first glance, of having only played it for like 2 weeks, Warborne does do PvP better, and that's not being biased in any way. You know, Albion sort of made my career, but I've got to be honest, and I'm always honest with you guys. But Albion isn't gonna die. Even if Albion loses all of its 10-15,000 PvP players, Albion isn't going to die, because Albion, again, isn't a PvP game. The majority of its players, 90% of its players, do not do PvP. What the PvP in Albion is for is basically to pay SBI's wages. Whenever anybody loses their gear and they've just flat out lost everything, that's when they swipe. That's what pays, you know, Albion Online. That's what they make their money off. Now, sure, if Albion Online does lose a large majority of its PvP players, its full loot PvP players, to Warborne, then that will have a knock-on effect. If items are selling less, the price is going down, economy players are making less, it will affect Albion, but honestly, at the moment, it's way too early on to even be sparking a debate whether Albion is going to die because of a PvP game that plays similarly came out. I will say Warborne did do what Albion hasn't done, and it's listened to its full loot PvP player base. Now, there's an obvious reason for this, and it's because we're not the majority, whereas, you know, if Warborne specifically focuses on that niche, then that is the majority for them. So they're doing continuous updates practically every single day to make every player's experience way better. Now, if you're somebody that's played both Albion and Warborne, I'd love for you guys to leave a little short comment underneath so I can have a look, have a little read, see what your guys' opinion is on it. And if you guys would want to see some Warborne gameplay, now I know most of you are Albion players, so if I were to do Warborne gameplay, or videos, I should say, I will explain each little detail, because I know if you just watch a fight, you're not going to know. Like, we know what a purge is in this game. We know, like, what stuns. We know all of that type of stuff. So I will do explanations for all of that. But it'd be interesting to see what people feel about the two games. As you've probably guessed, I prefer Warborne at this point. I won't lie to you. Again, being somebody that mainly wants to do PvP content, Warborne is just a better option. There's more incentive, and it's something new and fresh, so it feels like it feels promising, I won't lie. Now, I could be wrong. We've seen a lot of games pop up recently that are, you know, either extractor Moba type games, and they've died out. Seekers of Skyvale, just, you know, there was a lot of promise in that game, and it just died completely within the first month. But yeah, overall, I don't think Albion has anything to worry about.